Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Vibe. Well, extra vibes. This time we're discussing the top 10 albums of 2022. We're back here again. Of course, I'm joined once again by Lee Graham.
Yeah, mate.
Back for another year.
Yep, we made it through another one, mate.
I know we've made it through another one, and we were discussing kind of off camera a bit there, where we were saying that the releases this year have been a little bit quieter. We thought that maybe last year, maybe it was that kind of COVID after COVID thing, where everybody brings out an album. Maybe this year's the year where everybody tours. That's the impression I seem to get.
I think that's from what I've gathered. I mean, you've only got to look at sort of September, October onwards. It's been pretty intense on the touring front for a lot of people.
Yeah. So, before we get into things properly, we usually have honourable mentions. Do we have any honourable mentions?
I do. I have a couple. The first one that came to mind on honourable mention is Blue Nation with their Echoes EP. Now, obviously, for the obvious reason of it being an EP, it can't be in the top albums of 2022. But I just feel like in terms of song quality, it's up there. If this was based on if this was top 20 releases for 2022, this would definitely be right at the top end for me. The guys have really taken a progression on. It's got great reviews. Seems to be getting great live reviews. I was supposed to go up to the EP launch show up in Birmingham and see the guys, but unfortunately, I had a mass migraine the night before and didn't really fancy a 4.5-hour journey when I'd slept for about 20 minutes. So I had to sort of decline on that one, sadly. But the EP is fantastic. It's one of the best releases of the year for me, but obviously just doesn't quite tick the criteria of it being an album.
Yes, you got to whack a few more songs on it, Blue Nation, and then you might get in there. Do we have any more? Or was that just the?
There's a couple more. Joanne Cheryl Taylor's "Nobody's Fool." I think that's a great release. It only came out the week before last, though, so I haven't had the chance to sort of soak it up as I have some of the other albums in my top 10. And Ginger Wildheart's for the same reason, to be honest with Ginger Wildheart and the Sinners. Really enjoyed what I've heard. But I myself, I only just started properly soaking it up the last couple of weeks or so. So though, again, although a great record, I haven't had a chance to get to know it as well as I have certain others.
I mean, I had this last year where, we're not claiming that this is the perfect top 10 for everybody that's out there. Because last year I omitted Florence Black because I hadn't heard much of them. Whereas, if I look back on it now, I would put Florence Black right up there. I just hadn't got around to listening to it properly. You can listen to an album, but you can't really digest it. You got to really kind of get through it a few times, I think. So this could be the case where we might have a differing opinion in the space of a few months. Some albums may creep up the list. There might be an album out there that we haven't heard of. But yes, my honourable mention, currently the only one, is Robin Trower, No Worlds to Conquer. It's kind of crept in at the last. I was looking through, as I do at the end of the year. Yesterday, I had to listen to about 15 albums in a day. because I'm the type of person, right, that the albums at the start of the year, I'll forget about them a little bit. So I've got to kind of go back and listen to them all. Yeah. And I feel like I've got to judge it fairly. And Robin Trower was very close to making it in there. It's, for a guy that's been around for so long, he's still putting out this great content, great music. It's the mark of the album's a mark of a guy that kind of, he knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? He's a veteran at this point, and it just didn't quite make it. But I would still say, for those that maybe haven't listened to him for a while, or for some reason have never heard of him, go and check it out. It's still well worth having a listen to.
I must admit, I haven't heard this album, mate, so I'll have to go check out. I've seen him.
Yeah, it's still, despite the fact that he's been around, it still feels fresh, which is ridiculous at this point in his career. Well worth a listen, I would say. And yes, moving on, we're going into our top 10 now. What is Lee's number 10?
So my number 10, you may remember last year I mentioned a band called Live Signs in my choices.
Yes.
The band who was supporting them that night is my number 10. It was a band called Blackheart Orchestra. And they're a two-piece. They're very much along the progressive side of things. They released their brand new album Hotel Utopia a few weeks back, and just the richness in this sound is incredible for two piece. What they get out, and it was really interesting. I was speaking to them the other week while they were talking about how they translate that to live, because they were very much a case of there's only so much we can do in a live setting, and also they don't use any backing tracks or anything like that. Everything they do live. So, but the album for me was absolutely fantastic. The songs have great. There's a great lot of light and shade in this album, which for me always you've got a track in there called Astronaut, which is quite guitar heavy driven, and then you've got sort of more folky stuff and more ambient pieces. It's just a great record, and it might well have been further up the list had I had more chance to soak it up. But yeah, that's my number 10.
That's a sort of shout. I always find it interesting when we can pick out bands that maybe aren't so well known, aren't so mainstream, and because it's great. I mean, like I've never heard of these, so now I can go away and listen to them. Hopefully, others will do the same.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. My number 10. It's a band you'll be familiar with. It's Cardinal Black with January Came Close. Now, this album, it feels it's got like this kind of, when you want to put a vinyl on and it's a Sunday and it's really chill, and I don't know, it could either be like a summer afternoon, it could be a winter afternoon, but it's just got that kind of chill vibes.
Yeah.
And it feels perfect for that kind of environment. I don't know, there's something about that. And there's, obviously there's, the guitar virtuoso that is Chris Buck. We know that. He's great. But I would say that, this isn't, absolutely no discredit to Chris Buck, but this isn't like the Chris Buck band.
No.
Tom is, I think, an incredibly great, like amazing vocalist. He's got like so much soul in his voice. It's real passion. And I think, the lyrics really shine through, and it's, I don't know, it's got this kind of feel about, like, it feels like this is a step one for them.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be more to come from this band, and they're going to get better and better. But it feels like they're the self-proclaimed oldest new band ever. Like they feel like that. But they've taken the time with this album. They've slowly been building, and they put it out, and it just feels like this great album you can whack on a Sunday. And it's, I don't know, there's something about it. I can't quite explain it. But
it's an album to get lost in, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's the phrase. It's like, you can just kind of relax and just kind of, go with that moment. So that is my number 10.
Nice one. My number 9 is another one down the progressive route, and it's Shape of Water with their latest release, Amor Fati. Now, these are a band that I got into during lockdown with their first album. Forgot the name of the first album, Great Illusions. Again, brilliant record. But it was like it was a classic debut thing. There was like a promise there, and it showed great promise. And I feel that like with the second album, it's really opened up their sound, and it's really given it a whole other. They've definitely gone a lot more down the progressive route in this second album. They've shown a lot more textures. And it was an album that I really give to more progressive side, like you say, would just keep revealing itself more and more the more you listen to it. And the day it was released, I happened to be in the office on my own, so I was there with my headphones on, and I just thought, I'll give that a listen because I hadn't heard I like Shape of Water, and I just kept it on loop, and it was so captivating. I think that the guys have really defined their sound on this record, and if they manage to do that on the second record, I'm really excited to see, like you say with Cardinal Black, what the future holds for them.
I mean, the last time me and Aaron, we spoke with them back in the day, And they were talking at that point about kind of discovering their sound. They were kind of finding out who they were. They were releasing these kind of different flavored tracks. And I think it's great to see that band progression, isn't it, now, where they're kind of reaching this point. Like, they do feel like they know who they are now at this point, I think.
Yeah.
There's a real kind of, there's a clear identity while still kind of being, to a degree, experimental, which I think is really interesting to be able to kind of walk that line.
I loved on, I think it's in Ghost in Manchester right at the end, they've got like a little nod to Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes, they have that kind of Queen reference in there. I think that's cool. You know, it's got that. Yeah, exactly. My number 9 is a band that actually discovered at Just Push Play of all places. Well, properly discovered anyway. It's the Karma Effect with their self-titled album. Now, I have a thing for bands that have this kind of flavor. You know, that is that kind of Black Rose. It's that kind of. What else could there be? Like a hint of Aerosmith here, a hint of that kind of vibe, bit of Dirty Honey for those that are familiar with them. It's just they have such a feel good album.
They do,
you put it on and it just lifts you. It's got that kind of feeling like. It's a great song to just great album to put in when you're going for a drive or something, or on a sunny day. And it's very catchy. I mean, like the Steal Your Heart for me is the highlight. When I saw
that song they sent to me was Steal Your Heart.
Yeah, exactly. When I saw the guys at Just Push Play, I thought, because I was sat with the Howling Tides lot. And we were just kind of up there on the higher tier there, and we were just watching these guys, and we were like, "This is like a tight band." They know.
Oh,
they feel experienced. Yeah, they feel like they've been around, even though obviously they haven't actually been around for that long. No. But there's real experience on this record, and again, it's like what you said earlier. There, it's there's a promise of more. I think
definitely.
And I can certainly see them as being a band that's going to kick on next year as well.
I think so. I think they're already lining up the second album, aren't they? So it'll be very exciting to see what comes from that.
Yeah, second album. They've just announced a couple of weeks ago. They announced the Stone Dead evening, on the Friday, which is like a big thing for them. I think that's a good step up there.
Oh, that'd be great. That's going to be a good show.
Exactly. So yes, that is my number 9. Moving on. Great.
Number 8. So my number 8 is Rebecca Downs with The Space Between Us. To me, one of the finest voices out there. First caught Rebecca. One of the things when I went to see Magnum and she was opening up, and her voice was just so captivating. I sort of fell in love with music then, and she's released a few more albums since. But this new one, when I got sent the first single, Hold On, for the radio show, I knew it was going to be another strong record from her. When I got sent the second single, which was a cover of one of my favourite Free songs, A Little Bit of Love, I thought, brave taking on Paul Rodgers, but she's got the power to do it, man. And so much so that this album, I interviewed her ahead of its release, and I said, they'd done a couple of covers as singles, but they'd never included one in an album. When I say that, guitarist and co-songwriter Steve Burkett needs to get a mention because it's under the Rebecca Downs moniker, but she will say, and she always brings him up anytime I spoke to interviews, they're a songwriting team, they're a musical partnership in this one. And yeah, they've released singles and covers as singles for a bit of fun or whatever between albums and that kind of thing, but never on an album. And I said, well, what made you, be so secure in that cover that it would fit the album? And she said it just lined up with the sort of vibe of the album, the way it flowed, and it just seemed right to sit there. And having listened to the album and had a chance to soak up, I'm a big Free fan, but this could almost have been written for that album with the way she's done the rendition of it. And I mean that with like the sort of utmost sincerity. If you ignore the fact that you've known the song previously, it could almost have been written by them two. And it's just a blues soulful masterclass as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, it's got to be in my top 10.
It's a solid shout. My number 8. We're going a bit more kind of experienced now. Well, we're going very experienced at this point. We're going with the Scorpions, Rock Believer.
Yeah, okay.
Now, this when this came out, there was this real buzz around this record. People were like, "Oh, this is like the best thing since like Blackout." You know, they're going way back. You know,
yeah.
And I sat down and listened to it recently, only like a few days ago. And I thought, you know, this has this real kind of energy and flavor. It kind of, you know, it feels that kind of classic era Scorpions again. It's like they've gone back into that well, and it's just this real well crafted album. You know, it does have this kind of 80s vibe to a degree. But it's, you know, it still kind of feels modern at the same time. It's interesting. I mean, it's very catchy. It's, you know, it's what you would expect from the Scorpions, but it's just done really well. And they've just gone back to, you know, this kind of classic feel that they've had. And you know, it's a really solid album. I think that, you know, it's going to be one of those that does well over Christmas. I think people will be buying the album over Christmas, and you know, I think testament to them really at this stage in their career to be still releasing new material that still feels fresh, that's still kind of, you know, you could play it in an arena. It's still got that vibe about it, and yeah, for that reason, it has to go into the top 10 this year, I think.
It's a good call, man. I mean, I've heard the singles off of it. I've not heard the album as a whole as yet. And I do love the Scorps. I thought the album beforehand, Return to Forever, was brilliant. But equally, I was really intrigued to see where they took it, because for me, although obviously James Kotak was on the drums for them for a long period, about 20 years or something, the times I saw him once with James Kotak, but I've only the twice I've seen him thereafter has obviously been with Mickey D behind the kit, and I think he takes it up another level, certainly live. So I am intrigued to see where he takes it on in a studio setting.
No, I agree. I think that it does feel, particularly from that side of things, it feels like a step up. You know, I don't know whether it's just re-energized the band, but there's a new energy about this record that's come out. You know, it feels like they've had a bit of a push again. You know, there's a real hunger there that really like comes over on the album. So it's interesting at this point in their career, you know, as other bands and acts are starting to kind of retire. You know, we're seeing Whitesnake go away. We're seeing, you know, Peter Frampton go. We're seeing, you know, these kind of long-term mainstay bands. You know, they're still out there. They're still releasing records. You know, still doing the stuff. And credit where due, isn't it?
Definitely, man.
Yes. Moving on, number 7.
Yep. So my number 7 is Scarlet Rebels and See Through Blue. This for me had to be in the top 10 albums. A band with undeniably a lot to say on this record. I mean, even the title and the cover art alludes to what the subject matter is within the album itself. And I think obviously with the last couple of years that everyone's had, it's been tough. And I think no matter where you stand politically, and everyone's obviously entitled to where they stand and everyone's opinions, but without doubt, a lot of wrongdoing happened, and a lot of things that shouldn't have been allowed to happen did happen. And I think, you know, Scarlet Rebels had something to say about it, and you know they've stuck to keeping their ethos correct. I mean, with the food bank thing and everything that they do at gigs, which I think is fantastic. And I think this album is another way of them to showcase that, you know, you can still write political songs without it being, for want of a better terms, too System of a Down-esque, where they wrote, you know, so many songs about what they believed in, but became almost a parody of themselves on some things. I thought was System, but I think this is an album that was meant for this year and for this time period. And I think it's delivered with conviction and really articulately. There's moments where certain lyrics came out and I was just like, whoa. Like, okay, you said the mood of a whole nation in like one line. And I just think, yeah, the guys have got the goods, and yeah, for that reason, it's my number 7.
It's always difficult when you have a record that's like a political record, because it's by its nature it's going to make people either question or take a look at things a bit deeper or even disagree with it. But if you can put something out there that's just such high quality that people can kind of almost look past that, or enjoy the songs for what they are, and maybe take something away from it, as you say, that, and then they maybe fully agree with those points, and it's gets everything out there. It's I think for a lot of people it'll be a kind of a therapeutic album,
definitely.
Yeah, and that's powerful. I mean, I haven't seen that kind of thing for a long while. A political album.
No, I haven't, and it's done in the only way that they can. It doesn't unless you're. I mean, to a casual listener, if you're not paying too much attention to the lyrics, it would still sound just like a great rock record. But there's a lot more to it than that.
It's always good when there's that extra layer.
Definitely.
My number 7, it's a guy that well, we both know quite well. It's Troy Redfern with The Wings of Salvation. This feels like it's a great kind of follow-on album for me. I really loved Fire Cosmic.
Great record.
And that was kind of my introduction to Troy. And this feels like, I mean, we had this great discussion when I had him on, where we spoke about, it for me, it felt like this was kind of a continuation of like, taking a bit of Ghosts from the first record there, and kind of carried on a bit more of that flavor. And it does feel a bit like that in some regards, but it also feels like he's kind of almost taking influences from people he's toured with almost.
Yeah.
There are some people there that are out there that are saying, there's a couple of kind of almost glam rock kind of moments there, which he may have subconsciously taken from the likes of The Sweet and people like that. But again, undeniably, from the moment you put this album on, it's like it's Troy Redfern. He's got that real. He's really got this sound down at this point. You know who it is the minute it comes on, and it's just a really enjoyable record. I think that again, I mean, I feel the production's better this time around.
I think it captured his sound a bit better this time around.
I think that there's, it's a better thing. I mean, it is incredible that when he said, "Oh, this was made essentially from scratch in about 4 weeks," 4 weeks to make an album, which is quite astonishing, really. But yeah, I think one of my personal highlights is Gasoline.
Yeah.
There's stuff in there, Mercy. Some real catchy songs in there that again have got some good radio time for him again. And it's an album that I think that again introduces new people. New people are coming in, they're still discovering him. And it just helps build that audience a bit more whilst releasing quality content. I mean, you can't go wrong with that, I don't think.
No.
So yeah, that's my number 7.
Cool, man. Like you say, it's a very good sister album, for want of a better term, to Fire. Even though it's, like you say, slightly raw on the production, but I think that adds to the charm of it.
No, I agree. It's, for me, it does feel like that kind of sister brother type thing. It's like the other side of the coin. I don't know, something about it.
But my number 6 is an album you mentioned earlier on. Actually, it's Cardinal Black.
I had a feeling this would be in your list.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I was at Planet Rock Winners End Festival, and that was the only time I've seen them live to date, but obviously first time as well. And without doubt, these guys were an absolute highlight, like without doubt. And what I loved about them was it's Planet Rock Festival. There's a lot of heavier side of things going on. And then, a lot of sort of in your face more. And then, like you say, Tom, for me, has got one of the best soul voices I've ever heard. And obviously, a lot of it is a lot more atmospheric. You know, Chris Buck, great guitarist, but you know, he's not shredding. He's playing the notes that, you know, more of an emotional player, making every note count. And you were seeing these guys. I mean, I know you shouldn't go with things, but I think Phil Campbell was headlining that day. I think I'm right in saying. And you had, say, these sort of hardened biker Motorhead fans down the front waiting for Phil Campbell to come on. Cardinal Black came on, and stereotypically, you'd imagine people to walk out in that scenario. No one did. Everyone in the whole of the venue was just captivated by him. So I've been waiting for this album for a long time. You know, even looking in the crowd, there was bands who'd been playing throughout the day. I know Dane Campbell himself was in it, because it was actually Dane who said to me, because I went and had a chat with Dane, because obviously they were playing Just Push Play.
Yeah.
And I went and had a chat with Dane, and he said, "Look, I'm not being funny, Lee. I've really got to go and watch these guys." And that's fine. I want to check them out too. So I walked in with Dane. I know Howard Tides boys were watching them. There was other guys in there that I'd see in the crowd watching them. So it was an album I was waiting for a while, and it just goes back to what you were saying. It's an album where you could just put it on and shut out the world. Whatever was going on, you could just put on this album, and just from the first notes of it all the way through to the last, just chill out. And like you say, it's one of those, for want of a better term, Sunday afternoon albums. Nothing's going on, just soak up, go to another dimension, as it were, and enjoy it. And that's for me. It's got to be my number 6.
No, that's the solid choice. I said to my dad just a few hours ago, I said, "Oh, I'm doing the top 10 tonight with Lee."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Do you think you'll have any similarities?" And I says, "I would put my house on Cardinal Black." That's the one. If there's one album, it'll be that one. My number 6, it's Revival Black, Under the Light.
Cool.
This one's it's an interesting one. I heard their first record, very good record. It kind of hits you in the face as soon as you put it on, really. It's just so loud, and it's got this real like heavy sound, and obviously powerful vocals from Dan. But this one, it feels like they had taken that from the first record, but they've now kind of honed their craft. They've they developed who they were and moved on a little bit further. I think the biggest thing I would take from comparing the two is the production. For me, the production on the second album is so far ahead of the first one, it's ridiculous. I think it's a vast improvement. As much as I enjoyed the first one, I felt that this one is on just another level entirely. I think that in many reviews, people obviously cite Dan as having such a powerful voice and having this real classic kind of rock vocalist kind of sound, and they're just a great band. And I mean, obviously we know now that Dan's departed the band and they're going to go in another direction. I mean, we're kind of waiting to see what they're going to come back with now. But I felt like, I mean, it was a shame, I think, to see this kind of departing just after the release of the record, because in many ways it kind of overshadowed things a little bit from my perspective anyway. But just looking at this album is, I think it's a quality album, and for me personally, I feel that it had to be in that kind of top 6 category, because it's just it's catchy. It's got everything that you want. Like, if I want to listen to like hard rock, but like a modern take on it, I'd put this on. It feels that kind of go-to kind of record for that genre. So that's my number 6.
Cool, man. It's a great record, and like you say, it's a shame that it won't be celebrated as we thought it might be. But I'm sure whatever happens in either party, both parties will do well. Yeah, yeah. I've got to say, I was really excited by this record as well. So yeah, they're cool.
It'd be interesting to see where both parties go next.
They will.
You know, I think it's always difficult replacing a singer, but I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go now and who they're going to get.
Yeah, it's that thing, isn't it? Like you say, it's difficult replacing a singer.
Mm.
We were talking about this obviously when the news broke amongst some friends of mine, and a mate of mine put it as, yeah, you couldn't have Aerosmith without Steven Tyler, but could you have Aerosmith without Joe Perry? And you're like,
Exactly.
No.
This is it. I think that, it's an interesting thing from both sides of the coin. Dan will no doubt find a new band to kind of supplement his new sound or his new style or whatever direction he's going to go in. But he's got to find a new band. They've got to find a new vocalist. It's an interesting one, but it's also very exciting because you could potentially now get two quality bands out of this.
Yeah.
And I love seeing when somebody's kind of plucked from obscurity. If we go and find another top vocalist from out of nowhere, that's going to be exciting. I think. I mean, it could re-energize the band again. So we'll see where they go next.
It'll be interesting to see where both parties go. Definitely. My number 5 is a band you will have seen at Just Push Play this year. An album that came out right at the beginning of the year. The band is Just a Ride, and it's their self-titled debut. That's my number 5, and I'll be honest. I think between my number 5 and my number 2, on any other given day, they could jumble. It is that tight. But yeah, I've gone with Just a Ride at my number 5. The debut album is one that I was fortunate enough to sort of see grow to a certain extent. I got sent I Want to Know, one of their singles, quite before the album was in place, from Nicky Smash at Rocket Dolls, who was helping the guys out at the time, who I know pretty well. Nicky sent it across to me because he knows what I'm like for my grungier side of things, and was like, mate, you should check these guys out. And I was like, man, this sounds wicked. And got the guys on for the radio show for a chat fairly early on, certainly quite substantially before the album was released, and got talking to the guys, got to know Drew and Rod and Alex and the rest of the guys very well, and John as well, and their former bass player Russell, and they were kind enough to sort of send me the tracks as they were developing. So when the first mixes were coming back to them, wow. I got a Dropbox link from Drew just saying, let us know what you think. And I was like, oh, wow, don't expect to get trusted with that sort of thing every day.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the first mixes. I thought they were sounding wicked. And then I got the album when that came out, and it was like the songs had developed even further and took on a life of their own. And it's an album mostly steeped in grunge, which is a period of music I absolutely adore. But equally, it doesn't sound old. It doesn't sound tainted. It doesn't sound tired. It sounds very fresh. It sounds like it's made for now. And yeah, for those reasons, it's got to be in my number 5.
It's interesting having, a modern grunge band, because you don't see many of them anymore, or at least you don't hear many of the modern grunge bands out there. And I mean, from bits that I've seen of them, they seem a cool group of guys. They have this kind of energy that about them. And the bit that's been cut, because people won't see that, the bit that's been cut. I said there's a poll, right? As in a voting poll. Lee mistook that as something completely different context, where I possibly could have been banned, but luckily it wasn't in that tone. So there we go. Moving on.
Luckily, Ryan isn't a comedian from the 70s, so we're okay.
Yes, I'm not a 70s comedian, believe it or not. I'll take my stained shirt and I'll put it back in the cabinet. There's no smoke in the room. There's nothing like that. My number 5, it's an interesting one that ironically I just picked up today in physical terms. Okay. So, blah, 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 blah. It is, give me a second, it is Entering Heaven Alive by Jack White. Yeah, this is the second of his 2 releases this year. You know, first off, he started with Fear of the Dawn. And Fear of the Dawn, it didn't make it into my top 10 because I don't know, it's just not my kind of taste, Fear of the Dawn. I think that it's a little bit too far down this kind of almost electronic, more experimental road that he sometimes ventures down. But I feel this one walks the line perfectly between a little bit of experimental with, you know, pieces of different genres, but it has this kind of Jack White feel to it at the end of the day. And it doesn't feel too out there. Whereas a couple of the tracks on Fear of the Dawn, like Heidi Ho and whatnot, is a little bit too far for my taste. You know, but Fear of the Dawn for me is it's got this great variety whilst, as I say, still having this overarching tone and feel. I mean, it's got like a couple of like almost folky elements in there. It's got a bit of like almost kind of jazz type influences in here as well. There's a track that I found ridiculously catchy called Madman from Manhattan. It's just got a real cool vibe. Again, this is like what I class as a Sunday album.
Yeah.
You know, put this on a Sunday and, you know, it'll have just that kind of chill vibes, has that kind of flavor about it. But again, really great lyrics. I mean, for me, one of the highlights on this one is If I Die Tomorrow. It's just got this kind of cool flavor while still being Jack White at the same time. But
what I like about Jack White is he constantly pushes himself. You know, he doesn't
this is it.
I've not heard anything either of his releases this year, sadly. But
yeah, this is what I like about him, because he's not frightened of venturing into new territories.
No.
And you know, some of it you might not like, some of it you might like. And he seems to be perfectly fine with taking that kind of gamble of like, well, you know, some of my audience may not like this, but you know, they might like this. And I feel that this kind of double release this year was for that two sections of the fan base. You know, I feel that this one, Enter in Heaven Alive, is kind of more towards the people like me that like that kind of White Stripes, you know, where solo work kind of. I think this is closer towards Blunderbuss from a few years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas Fear of the Dawn is a little bit more out there, bit more wacky, bit more experimental. So if you're feeling experimental, go and check that one out, see what you think.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think, you know, again, it's just the overall thing is quality, and I think it's just a real quality, solid album. That's great to listen to. So that's my number 5.
Good choice, man. I have to check that out. Like I say, I've not heard the release of Jack White this year, so I'll have to go check that out, mate.
Yes, don't be too scared by Fear of the Dawn, because it's a bit out there. So we're moving into top 4. It's getting serious.
Yeah, it's starting to get serious now, mate. So my number 4 is Grand Theft Audio with Pass Me the Conch.
I mean, that's a hell of a title.
It's a great title, isn't it? As we said earlier, you know, I'm a big Wild Hearts fan, and although I haven't had the chance to soak up obviously Ginger and the Sinners album as much as I'm enjoying it, the Grand Theft Audio album is one I have been able to soak up. And when Richie said he was getting, obviously drummer with the Wild Hearts kids, said he was going back with Jay to do Grand Theft Audio stuff, I was really excited. You know, I mean, this is only their second album, and their first album was released in 2000, so it's, you know, 22 years in the making for the follow-up. And
competing with Guns N' Roses, yeah,
exactly. Although, to be fair to Grand Theft Audio, I don't think they've been solidly working on it like on Chinese Democracy. I think they made it fairly quickly in comparison, to be fair. Like I say, I was, you know, excited to hear what they were going to come up with. The album's full of energy, dual punk rock sensibilities and attitude. Again, like the first album, it's that fusion of punk rock with a bit of electronica in it. I mean, there's a track on it which I love, if only for the title. Well, it's not only for the title, but the title of the song is just called Trevor.
Perfect title.
Great title. and that in its tone is almost Nine Inch Nailsy. It's like really industrial, really electronic. And then you've got songs like Gods of Rock, which is more on the punk rock kind of side of things, and there's everything in the middle. It seems to be just how much they turn up the electronica and how much they turn up the punk rock, depending on what happens with the album. The energy on it is amazing. It's unlike Cardinal Black. It's not an album to chill out in your living room too. I'll be honest. It's an album to blast out to number 11 and jump around like a loon in your living room too. But it's brilliant. I love it. Just it took me back to that time, and it's very much of its time. I think the album nods to the band's past in the debut, but I think absolutely showcases a path for their future. It's not a path for any other band, I don't think. I think it's a path that only Grand Theft Audio could take. But if anyone else watching went to see the tour that they did with CJ Wildheart and Scott Sorry, you'll know how much energy those guys have live and how well those songs transitioned. I've never been to a show quite like that before. It was absolutely intense. And, and then they came on towards the end and did like encore of a bunch of Wild Heart songs, like between the three bands, which was great. But yeah, that's for my reasons, it's my number 4.
That's a solid choice. And it also, as a side note, I love the name Grand Theft Audio. It's as a Grand Theft Auto fan as a kid, it's got some cool similarity there. Love it.
I'm pretty sure stuff from the debut album ended up on Grand Theft Auto.
Really?
I think so. I think it was on the soundtrack. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
I'm gonna have to have a look at that, because if so, that's pretty cool. You know, with a name like that, it has to be on Grand Theft Auto, surely to God.
Got to be in it.
My number 4. It's a guy that I've interviewed for a record, 3 times this year. One including a gear show, so that kind of counts. It's Jack Broadbent with Ride.
Okay.
And it's not. Some people go, "Oh, Christ, it's Jack Broadbent," but it's on its own quality. You know, this is the reason why we had him back a few times, because it's a great record, and not many people talk about this record. Not over here, anyway. He's doing very well abroad. You know, he's just toured with Peter Frampton, so you know, kind of speaks volumes. But it's got, again, this is a great record for a Sunday, or you know, that kind of chill vibe thing again. But it also has these kind of more blues rock kind of elements with the title track "Ride."
Of course.
Which is just, for me, it was just badass. That was the first thing I put on when I listened to him, and I thought, you know, this is great. It's right on my kind of street. But it also, you know, there's also stuff on there like Hard Living, which he really loves playing, and it's really like soulful, and it's got this real mood to it. And also, you know, he kind of walks this line between, you know, he doesn't like to box himself into a certain genre, which is interesting, even though it's kind of predominantly bluesy type stuff. He's not afraid to go into that kind of jazz territory. He's not afraid to take a bit of that. He's not afraid to go, you know, full on blues. He's not afraid to go a little bit rocky. It's, in many ways, it's kind of this Jack White thing, but to a lesser degree. But yeah, it's just a great record, and you know, it's got this great overarching theme throughout every song. It's, you know, it's about movement, and it was written during a time where nobody could go anywhere. So it's a very poignant kind of release. Now, especially now, everybody can go out into the world again. It's really great follow up from his previous release. So for that reason, it's my number 4.
I got to thank you, man, because I wasn't aware of him until you did your first interview with him, and then I started checking him out thereafter. He's a great songwriter.
Yeah, it's really, really talented guy, and you know, he's it's one of those that's like constantly on tour, constantly going places.
Yeah.
Always doing something. So yes, that's my number 4.
3. So yes, into the top 3 now. It's a band that I've been a fan of for a long time now. They released their 6th record, I think this is now, for them. It's Massive Wagons and Triggered.
Oh, yes.
So obviously the Lancaster boys are once again delivering up the goods, and I think Untriggered they've once again delivered it in absolute spades. From the opening anthem, anti-bullying anthem of "Fuck the Haters," or "Forget the Haters" as it's called on my radio show, is
Yes.
before the watershed. That was the thing. That was the first song I heard of it. They played it at Download Festival. They said, "Oh, this is going to be our single from the new album." And I was stood next to Joe, obviously, and I was, "Oh, brilliant! I'm going to get to have some new Wagons to play." And they're like, "Yeah, new single out next week." And I was like, "Oh, great!" And then Baz goes, "It's called Fuck the Haters," and I'm like, "I'm not going to get to play this on the radio, am I?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But and if you're like me, you'll get called a puff for wearing the "Fuck the Haters" t-shirt, anti-bullying campaign thing that they
The
have.
irony.
Yeah, I know.
Is that an anti-bullying t-shirt? Yeah. Guess what? I'm going to bully you for that.
Yeah, I was confused how someone could be that angry about 7:15 in the morning, but there we go. That's another conversation.
This bully starts early in the morning.
I get up really early to hate.
Yeah. He's got a full day of hate to get in.
All day of hatred to get in, and I'm doing overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from the anti-bullying anthem, forget the haters, all the way through to No Friend of Mine, the last track on the album. They once again, production on it's great. And like any other Wagons album, every song's different, every song goes down a different path, but it all unmistakably has that Wagon sound. And any album featuring a guest vocal by Benji Webber Skindred is always good in my book. And that particular track, Generation Prime's a definite sort of cherry on the cake, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's exactly what people need in this moment where everything's going up and everyone's struggling a little bit, and sometimes there's songs on it that are just fun and there's songs on it that have a serious message, but they'll all have that kind of massive Wagons energy about it. And looking forward to seeing the guys live when they take it out on the road next year. So for that reason, it's my number 3.
That's a solid choice. My number 3, it's they're almost, well, I would say that they are pretty much they're a full-on supergroup. It's iconic with Second Skin. This record kind of came out of nowhere. I vaguely remember this when it just came out. I was like, here's a full album of songs, and you listen to it and it's got this kind of White Snake kind of feel. I mean, they admit that, they know that. I mean, we've got 3 former members of White Snake in the band, so pretty much. Yeah. See, I actually think that you pretty much got 3 former members in there at this point. And of course Nathan James himself, that's unashamedly influenced. So of course, it's going to have that kind of vibe, but it has this also kind of almost 80s feel as well about it, again, kind of ties in. But it's a really enjoyable record. It's powerful. It's the dual vocals. It's got everything that you kind of want from that kind of genre of music.
Yeah.
It delivers that, and it's a real fun album. Yeah, for that reason, it just felt like when I was listening to all of these together, it was one of those very much like Georgia Thunderbolts last year, where it's like it's going to be in my top 10, and then it just kind of keeps creeping up the list, because it's just so fun. Yeah. It's enjoyable. It's got everything that you want from that kind of music. So it's made it to my number 3 spot.
Cool, man. I've not had a chance to really soak up the album yet. I've heard the few singles that they released, and I've listened to it sort of periodically, but I've not had a chance to really sit and properly soak it up. It's I mean, I like what I've heard, and obviously without doubt the caliber of musicians in that band is astounding. So
yeah, no, that's it. I think that it feels it's another record that's been made by guys that are just vastly experienced at this point. So they know what they're doing, and it's going to be, when you see these guys separately, you can almost kind of piece what they're going to sound like before they've played anything. And it is going to be that, but they do it incredibly well. So, you can't help but like enjoy it and just have fun with it. And for that reason, it's my number 3.
Cool.
Top 2.
Top
Deadly
2.
serious territory, yeah.
Deadly serious.
I know.
So, in fact, both, yeah, my number two is an album you mentioned earlier on as well, mate. It's Revival Black, and it's Under the Light.
I had a feeling when we spoke, we kind of had our pre interview kind of stuff, pre speak, and yeah, you spoke very highly of them at the time, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be high on the list.
I mean, like we said earlier, there's a lot of stuff being said with, splitting the band, and I'm
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
not even going to get into that.
No.
That's business amongst the band. But this album is without doubt one of the best albums I've heard in a long time.
Mm.
Um, Again, obviously, it was supposed to be released earlier this year, but they delayed it because of the production in vinyl, like a lot of artists have had to do.
Yeah.
Um, and they did send it to me ahead of the initial release. So I had the album, I think it was February this year. I actually had
Wow, so
that.
that's yeah, a fair wait.
Yeah. So I've managed to obviously soak up quite a lot. And
Mm,
when they sent it to me, I was actually on my way to the gym. So I do have a gym test for like bands that send songs.
yeah.
It's just going to power me through my workout for the next few minutes, sort of thing. But and I was on the treadmill, and I just realised I was on the treadmill a lot longer than I normally would have been because I
Yeah,
just
by the end of it. Yeah.
just the energy in this just kept me going, and it's a fantastic record. I think it only showed a bit like the Shape of Water side of
Mm,
things. It showed the band had a bit more of a 360 in their sound. I think it showcased them as finer songwriters, a tighter unit, and better performers. And I think the production on it also showcased them massively.
mm,
Even on songs like Hemispheres or slower track on the album, that is full of electricity, and it did really feel like capturing a lightning in a bottle sort of thing on this album for me. Um,
mm,
so yeah, it is I think the production's got, everything's great. You can hear all the levels, which always sound brilliant. It's got that right amount of jagged tooth edge to it, capturing the band at their finest. Um, yeah, I just think there's not a track in it that I was skipping, and
mm.
I've got to know the songs a lot. Obviously, getting to soak those up on the way up, and I think it's a tremendous record. And whatever happens in either party, I think that every single one of those guys has got something to be very proud of in this album. So for that reason, it's my number two.
No, I completely agree with that. It's yeah. I have the mental image now of you doing some kind of Rocky Balboa montage, like running on top of a mountain and screaming as this record is being played. It just has that kind of energy. It's perfect for that.
Yeah,
You
I was
know?
running around chasing a chicken and dragging a log.
Yeah. Just, chopping down trees,
Yeah,
doing everything like that. Next music video, Revival Black. Just
big
get Lee to
man.
run around a lot. Sorted. My number two. This is a band that have been around a while, but I feel that they really elevated themselves massively with this record. It's Goodbye June with See Where the Night Goes.
Oh, good call.
Yes, it's again they have the that kind of it's straight up classic rock. It's got a bit of this kind of old school AC/DC vibe. And Landon, the vocalist, when we interviewed him back in like February, start of the year, he summed it up perfectly what this record is. He said it's a feel good album that if you're having a barbecue you can have it on, and it's just got this kind of real good vibes about it. It's got a good energy, and it's a fun, enjoyable album. And in many ways with that kind of early AC/DC stuff, it's that it's got that kind of headbang quality while still having this clever lyrics and well structured stuff. And I believe that they're putting themselves up for the potential Grammy. So
Oh, right.
hopefully they do well.
Oh, cool.
But yes, it just feels like a real solid, well-rounded album, and for me it's a massive step up from anything they've done previously. I think that they've elevated themselves hugely, and yeah, I hope they come over to the UK
I was
at
going to
some
say, if
point.
they come over to the UK, yeah,
I don't believe they have yet. I know that they're doing quite well in America,
yeah.
but yeah, they've not really ventured over here too much. I don't think they ever have. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on that. But
No, I'm going to.
but yeah, I mean that'll be under the next album.
Not
Yeah,
played in the UK yet, Ryan Vasey.
yeah, UK tour. um, but yeah, it's one of them. It's just this real feel good album. I mean, one of the standout kind of songs for me is step inside, step
Yeah,
outside.
step
I think
inside.
it's step inside. Yeah, it's just that real kind of classic rock, and it's like, yes, I want to punch through a wall. It's just got that kind of like, yes, how's that feel about it? So yeah, for that reason, it's my number two.
Good call, man.
It's just feel good. It's perfect for that kind of stuff. Great driving album as well.
Yeah.
For those that are into that kind of playing your music while driving. Number one, it's very serious now. I can't think what your number one would be now. I'm running out of options.
You should be able to think of it. You chose it earlier.
I chose it earlier. Jesus. Is it Troy?
It is Troy.
It's Troy. Album of the year. Look at this, Troy. You're doing well for yourself.
Yeah. Well done, Troy, on impressing one man.
Yeah. Well, it's radio host. I mean, he's got the power, so he could just play all day.
On a Friday between 6 and 8 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, Wings of Salvation, Troy Redfern. That's my number one choice. Like yourself, I think we both had it in the same spot, didn't we? Fire Cosmic last year. I seem to remember we both had it.
Yes, I think it was around like fifth place last year.
Oh, that was it. And been a fan of Troy's for a long time. I thought that don't get me wrong, I've loved all his back catalogue, but I felt like Fire Cosmic was a real stamp in the ground in terms of finding his sound. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, with Wings of Salvation, it's definitely a sister album to that. And for me, the fact that in 4, possibly 5 weeks, including mixing, that album went from nothing to mixed and ready to go.
Yeah,
is insane.
It is ridiculous.
And 10 tracks of just doing what Troy does best. And, even, Dark Religion, which is essentially a blues rock sea shanty, as I put it to him. And it's got that kind of rhythm about it, and it's brilliant. Dark Religion's one of my favorites off the album. Other tracks like, you mentioned Gasoline and Come On, and everything that's going on there, on that record, they're just becoming favorites the more and more I listen to the record. And the production on it is pretty raw, but I like that because live Troy has a very kind of raw and powerful sound. Saw him most recently out on the road supporting Dare. They came to the Apex, and we went to go watch him. And because the production's as raw as it is, they translate so well live because you already got that. And I think, when I was speaking to Troy, and I know he said the same thing to yourself, but when you were chatting to him as well, that there was no overdubs of guitar, there was no stitching pieces together. It was like one takes, and then they might have used one guitar track from and pasted it with another drum beat, but it was all one takes. And I think that added to the sort of cemented the overall vibe of the record and capturing those moments once again, like we were talking about earlier. And it gets said a lot that Troy is arguably one of the best side players in the country, and I would wholeheartedly agree with that. But equally, I think on this record, his vocal needs a mention because, again, that vocals on this album is superb, and they've really, really captured. I mean, you could almost be in the booth with Troy. How they've captured his vocals on it. And
they've really, Troy mentioned this. He was like, on this record, we're pushing the vocals kind of to the front, whereas before it was a little bit kind of almost set back a little bit in kind of non-musicians terms.
Yeah.
Whereas this time he's kind of got nowhere to hide with it. You know, it's front and center, really.
Oh, completely front and center. And you know, there's absolutely zero fat on this record. You know, there's 10 tracks of absolutely all killer, no filler. And I know that's the time that gets bounced around quite a bit, but it's a time I absolutely believe in with this record. So for that reason, it's my number one.
That's it's a great thing to see. I mean, we're seeing year in, year out. There's one thing that I've noticed now, especially doing these. We're seeing more new wave of classic rock bands. We're seeing more kind of newer bands creeping into the top 10 lists. They're starting to bleed through a little bit more now, which is interesting. You know, in my 10, we're seeing, you know, possibly the most I've had of you know, this kind of new era of bands. But for my number one, there is I mean, technically they're a new era, but they're a group of veterans that have taken it this year. It's the Dead Daisies with Radiance.
Oh, okay, good call.
Again, I said that, you know, I listened to 10 albums the other day, and this was the one that really kind of it just really stuck out. I mean, as soon as you put this album on, it just blasts you away. I mean, there's you know, the experience of these musicians are ridiculous at this point. But it's got real kind of catchy stuff in there. I mean, Glenn Hughes is, you know, he's yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, how do you really sum him up? You know, he's still got this power in his vocals. He's, you know, there's the lyrics are great. You know, it's there was one track in particular that really stuck out to me. I think it was called Shine On. Just real catchy stuff. And it's very enjoyable, and you know, it's one of them that you will go back to again and again. And that's the thing I always try and go for with the number one. Like, it might not technically be the best technical album of the year. It might not be, you know, that kind of thing, but you know, when it's your personal top 10, you tie it to things. You know, is it enjoyable? Is it fun? Is it something that you're going to play regularly? For me, it's like, is it going to be in my rotation? And I think that the Dead Daisies Radiance actually is. You know, it's going to be straight in there. I believe just last week, when I was chatting with the Tides, Adam said, "Oh, you know, I'm just loving this Dead Daisies album."
Is it really?
And that kind of clicked in my head. I was like, yes, they have a new album out, don't they? I should probably listen to this. And I went and listened to it, and I was like, Christ, it is really good. And it's like, you know, fair enough. Yeah, again, solid stuff. So I think that, you know, it's the number one spot for me this year.
No, good call, man. I mean, I spoke to Doug Aldridge last week, and I'll be airing that this coming Friday. But every time I've been fortunate enough to speak to Doug a couple of times now, and every time I speak to him, he's still got that kind of, and I mean this with the utmost respect, because I think no musician should lose it, that kind of teenage enthusiasm about what he's doing, what he's writing, what he's playing, you know, that kind of kid in a sweet shop sincerity about it. And I don't think anyone should ever lose that, because I think when they do lose it, you know, that's when the albums become stale, and it becomes, you know, if they're not having fun, then it translates, you know. And there's tracks on Radiance like Courageous, with one hell of a riff, you know, and it's all the way through. And like you say, Glenn Hughes' vocals on this, I mean, the man's 71 now.
That's what I'm saying. It's ridiculous. Yeah. You know, you start the album and it's just like this booming vocal that's like so powerful, and it's like, this is mad. This is coming from a guy that's in his 70s.
Yeah.
Like, you know, to still be at the top of your game, like, not just be good, like at the top level, you know, it's, I felt like, you know, these guys have to take this number one spot because of this, you know, to still be absolutely smashing it. I mean, you could, at this point in your career, you could go, I don't know, I'll just put out an album. I'll put out a greatest hits, or I'll do something like that. But, you know, to go back to the studio again for Lord knows how many times for these guys, and still have that, as you say, that teenage energy, that excitement and hunger.
Yeah.
And yeah, put out, a quality album again. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting for me a few years ago when they had that transition, going from John,
Oh,
I can
John
never get
Corabi.
his, yeah, John Corabi, going from him to Glenn Hughes. I mean, that's just a tonal difference there.
Yeah,
They're
completely.
two very different vocalists, and it was like, how's this going to work? And they found a way to make it work. I mean, they've slightly adapted their style. I think they've centered themselves around Glenn Hughes now. But I feel that this album in particular, is the one where it's like they've elevated themselves to the next level. I feel. So for that
I
reason,
think so. I mean, the last album they did, which is the first time they did with Glenn, I believe,
yeah,
um, which is a great record.
mm.
But I feel like this one's got more gravitas. It's got more grit about it.
Mm.
It seems more cemented in what they are. And yeah, it's a fantastic record. And like we were saying, Glenn's vocals, Doug's guitar playing, Brian Tichy's back playing drums on this album. I've always rated Brian Tichy as a drummer. First time I saw Brian Tichy play was he was in the backing band or the band for Billy Idol when I saw Billy Idol at Download 2005, I think it was. And so I've always rated Brian as a drummer. And obviously Brian and Doug both played in Whitesnake together, so they've got that chemistry there already written in stone, if you like. And I think that's set off a good foundation for the rest of the record, really.
Yeah, I think that this is it was almost like they had with the previous release, it was like a kind of second debut album.
Yeah.
Because it was like they were starting afresh again.
Definitely.
And it feels like this is kind of the real strong follow-up where they've honed this kind of new direction. They know what they're going to do. And they've just absolutely smashed it at this point.
Yeah.
I'd be very, I mean, I still haven't managed to see them live yet, but I'd be very interested to hear this record live in particular, because I think that it's going to be absolutely booming live.
Yeah,
they've got some real good
seen them
stuff.
with Glenn yet, to be honest. I've seen them with John Corabi a couple of times, but for whatever reason, I've just not caught them live with Glenn yet.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's my number one, at least for this year anyway. So that was it. What do you think? Comment below. What is your top 10 album of the year? Well, top 10 albums. Yeah. Do you have any that we've both missed? Do you think like, oh God, you've left such and such an album out? Let us know in the comments below, because we're always interested, particularly if you have a band that we've never heard of.
Yes.
It's always exciting hearing new acts. If you're a band as well, if you think that you have a top 10 worthy album, drop a comment below. Always interested to find out who you are and what you're doing. So yes, thank you very much for coming on again, Lee.
Pleasure as always, mate.
We'll be seeing you in a few weeks at the time of release of this for the coveted Beyond the Vibe Awards, with a mystery person who we haven't yet decided yet. Still yet to be decided, but we're doing things a little bit different this year on Beyond the Vibe Awards. Last year, of course, the format of the show is that we haven't actually decided on who's going to win the category. We're going to kind of discuss it as we go along. But now we're kind of having a little mini panel. So Lee's obviously part of that mini panel, and there'll be somebody else. And it'll be interesting because nobody knows, including us, who's going to win.
I'm looking forward to it, mate. It's going to be good.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. It's something a little bit different. It's a bit fun. So yeah, tune in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much.